fellow Canadians, and welcome to the final show, the coup de grace. What I have uncovered and will describe to you this evening may very well be the final blow to Mark Carney's political career. Once you realize what he has done and what he is doing, you will realize we are in a catastrophic death spiral, and he is making a ludicrous amount of money in the process. I'm going to preface this and tell you a little bit about Mark Carney because it's important information. I will keep this as simple as possible so it is easy to understand, and I will use analogies to simplify it further on the end so you can grasp exactly what has been going on. So Mark Carney championed net zero. He started GFANZ in the UK in 2019. The accumulated total of the capital access was over $130 trillion. His net zero actually started to collapse when Republican attorneys started to subpoena banks in the US over anti-competition regulations. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, and so forth all exited net zero. So he championed de-risking green energy investment because there's no return on green energy. You'll be a decade to 2 decades before it's actually profitable, if ever. And this is very important because what you do is you take federal funds, taxpayer funds, you absorb all of the liability and cost to make sure that the investment succeeds, and you offer this as a guarantee so the private investors will come and invest in that project. Bloomberg announced in 2020 that Carney was the unofficial economic advisor to Trudeau. Since he is unpaid and unofficial, it does not trigger the Conflict of Interest Act, and he has complete influence over Trudeau's policy with zero consequence. So the 3 key figures are Chrystia Freeland, Justin Trudeau, and Mark Carney. Chrystia Freeland being the finance minister. From 2020 to 2025, approximately $190 billion has been allotted to de-risk green energy investment. Now the problem comes when GFANZ is collapsing, that $130 trillion disappears. There's only one place that you can access that kind of capital as cash on hand, and that is a country's pension fund. So through Trudeau, he created all the de-risk policy. Through Freeland, who Trudeau appointed, and remember, Mark Carney is the godfather of her child, the Canadian Growth Fund is created for $15 billion, which is used to de-risk green energy investment. Stick with me here because this is very important. The public service pension has very strict regulations for investing. It is only applicable to very low risk and typically an IRR compounding return. So you can't take pension money and de-risk green energy investment, and you can't use it to invest in green energy because it's typically a net loss. However, Mark's first transition fund, Brookfield Growth Transition Fund 1, later renamed 2, has PSP pension funds and Ontario Teachers pension funds as limited partners LLPs in that transition fund. Oh, that's why that's in there. And I thought, how did he get pension funds into that transition fund? Trudeau, obviously. All the board members of the Public Service Pension and the Canadian Growth Fund are selected through a process of the Treasurer and the Finance Minister. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister gets final approval. These individuals are paid between 6 and 7 figures, and the Prime Minister can remove them at any time without cause. Do you think you would listen to me if I can remove your 7-figure salary just like that? Yet these management systems are considered bipartisan. They are a political tool. The PSP also created a subsidiary called the CCFIM that manages that $15 billion Canadian Growth Fund. Try not to lose me here. So the final close on the Brookfield Transition Fund 2, which Mark managed with Teske, is $20 billion, and there is another transition fund with contracts with the UAE called the Catalytic Transition Fund for billions of dollars as well. Because this is routed through subsidiaries, disclosure becomes obscured. Now we're going to get to the smoking gun. This is just one example. Brookfield makes an initial investment of $300 million from this transition fund into Entropy Inc. in Canada. That is now a majority stake, and because it's not an investment in profit return, it meets the threshold for the PSP, which is your pension money. So a typical management fee at Brookfield for the entire fund is between 1.5 and 2%. What generally happens is as 100% of the capital is returned, I say returned, but you don't actually return the funds, there's then a 5 to 8% hurdle after that. There's a catch-up phase where Brookfield will collect 20%, and then after that there's an 80-20 split to the pension fund, which is the LLP, a limited partner. I should put that in the beginning. So the typical time frame and thresholds for Mark Carney to collect on that extraordinary 20% could take up to 10 to 15 years. And now comes the magic. They used the Canadian Growth Fund to de-risk the entire project on a contract for 15 years on a guarantee for $16 million a year and $200 million up front. That means all liability, all debt, and all carrying right to the finish line is taken on by the Canadian taxpayer. So we would support the project right to the end, be at a net loss as the completed project belongs to a foreign entity who collects all of the profits and reaps all of the rewards. If you didn't think that was bad enough, here is the nuke. When a government contract de-risks the investment, it is legally binded and can be front-loaded immediately, which means that 15-year valuation that is down the road occurs instantaneously, jumps the hurdle, and the 20% kicks in immediately. So not only are we at a net loss, the project will be foreign owned, and we have debt for the next 15 years, and Carney gets paid immediately. Do you have any idea what the 20% payout plus management fee, even after you pay the other managers and the dividends are separated, just for Mark Carney? If he is able to de-risk the entire platform, and he's doing it right in front of your eyes, we are de-risking the UAE commitments, and the UAE has the contract with the Catalyst Transition Fund that he also managed. The maximum dollar amount is between $750 million to $1.2 billion. If you didn't notice immediately after the budget was passed, all of these commitments start rolling in because they're all being de-risked. And the incredible part is this. He took your pension money, because you can't take tax money, it's not there, there's no pile of cash. Put it in a fund to attract other investors. It is a perfect circle, a snake eating its tail. And at the end of it, there's a net loss. We don't own the product, we don't own the profits. We'll get a little bit of tax and maybe some jobs. And Mark Carney will be a billionaire. That's like me taking all the money in your bank account, holding on to it to invest, taking half your check when you get it, taking 5% to put back in this money I took from you, and then keeping the rest. I hope you understand, as this continues, this is the ratio change that the Parliamentary Budget Officer is talking about. The debt is not only escaping the GDP, it's a contractual obligation for up to 20 years in some cases, meaning you can't escape. We are going to reach a no escape velocity, and even if you get him out of office, the damage cannot be recovered from. I have my suspicions that Chrystia Freeland was fully aware that this was going on, potentially has her own investments offshore, and she got the hell out as fast as she could when that last budget dropped, because Trudeau's budget was Carney's budget. Trudeau, Freeland, Mark Carney, complicit across the board. And if any member of that PSP fund signed an LPA, that's the limited partnership agreement, with simple interest instead of compound interest, which is the standard IRR, they're going to have a big problem. Because I ran the numbers upside down and backwards to see how fast I could make my money if I were Mark Carney and I was influencing the policy, and I would have put in simple interest annually versus compounding, because your front load becomes even faster. So every time we de-risk a project for 10 to 15 years, the firm, like Brookfield, front loads the entire contract for the full 15 years because it's black and white, and jumps straight to the finish line to get paid instantly. Think about that. Guys, I'm not talking about a little bit of money. The $6 million in stocks that they talk about, they told you that on purpose. Because when the Brookfield representative was in the House being questioned recently, who was clearly trembling, mentioned the stocks, but he also said carried interest, which means your guy Mark Carney is going to be a billionaire. Do you understand why he came to Canada? Because he spent 4 years building this and trying to access our pension funds because it's cash on hand. He needed it. That's what he was after the entire time, and I said it, and he literally said it in a press conference the other day and mentioned the $2 trillion. If you think it might be a coincidence, I ran a statistical analysis on the probability of all of those policies landing and those investments occurring in that exact chronological order, and it would be the same as if you built a plane, I built a runway, and you accidentally landed on that runway and not even knew where it was. It is impossible. It was facilitated by Carney, Trudeau, and Chrystia Freeland, and Carney actually did it all. Because Trudeau is as dumb as a bag of bricks, which I've said. This is cascade payment, and I've left out about 1,000 details that would just overcomplicate it all for you, but all you need to know is that it's a snake eating its tail. It's a completely false payback on our own pension funds with our tax money. Pension, tax money. This is what's happening. Go ahead and look it up. Send this to your friends. Send this to any economist that you know. Send it to Mark Carney. Send it to every PSP board member. Send it to Chrystia Freeland. I want everyone to know exactly what he's doing.